With a mocking expression, she points at him, hoping he will have another outburst. She cannot bear the thought that he is her childhood friend. It was then that something within him changed. Something deep within him snapped. Takayashiki Rue is not your average girl. She's one of the hottest idols right now. Plus, she's the granddaughter of Takayashiki Tao, the chairman of the Tagen Group, Japan's biggest corporate power, which means she has wealth and influence way beyond what most people can imagine. So in other words, she was a real-life princess in action. On the other hand, our main character Suzuki Kazuma is just an ordinary bloke. He's a bit down and unremarkable, with no friends, and most importantly, he's single. He's the kind of person you'd call a loner, sitting at the very bottom of the social ladder. His only real thing to show for himself is that he can call Rua his childhood friend. You might not believe it, but he spent his whole life following Rua around, like he was his Igor or something. But that's never been his dream. He's not interested in being special like Rua. He just wanted something straightforward. A genuine connection, friends, a girlfriend, and a normal life. But he didn't suddenly realize this while trying to tell her how he felt. Things took a turn for the worse. With venom in her voice, she questioned his intelligence, suggesting he should know his place as a worthless, gloomy loser. As his only value is being her childhood friend. Nothing more and nothing less. That role drained all his life points, and he should have seen it coming. As her words echoed in his mind, reminding him of his place, they felt like a heavy weight he had carried for years. Yet even then, he couldn't shake the longing for a normal life. It was during his first year of secondary school, in the spring, that he sat at his desk at home, just after receiving a text from Ria herself, asking him to meet her at the station the next day at 3 o'clock. Ya and some other friends had already planned to go to karaoke, and had asked if he wanted to join them. He thought this person might be Hiyagi Ayaka, the glamorous girl from school, who he had never spoken to. Confused, he wondered why he was the one who had to ask. As if he were answering his own thoughts. He mentioned something he had said about wanting friends, but most importantly, a girlfriend. He encouraged him that the best way to do that would be to join an elite music group, like theirs, urging him to take the first step. With his eyes shining with hope, he believed this was his chance to change, and he really wanted it. He dressed his best, and even visited the barber to get that perfect fade. It was finally the moment of truth. Just as he opened the door, he thought, to become the new me and change. The room burst into laughter as they teased me for actually showing up. It was so embarrassing. They even mocked his new fade, saying he smells like he just left the hair salon. Plus, they're making fun of his new jacket. Despite his efforts, Rua laughed the loudest, mockingly urging them to cease. Arya remained unamused, while Kazuma stood in silence. As he drowned out the background laughter, he realized it was a setup. Rua stood and asked him what was wrong as he appeared awkwardly still. She encouraged him to cry in front of everyone, having bet 10,000 yen that he would. Ignoring her plea, he whispered that he wanted her to answer just one question. He was desperate to know what he had done to deserve this. With a sinister smile, she replied that it was obvious, because he was her slave, urging him to continue and put on a good show for her. Then it happened. She finally admitted that she had always disliked the prospect of him being her childhood friend. Kazuma's eyes widened as he felt a profound sense of relief. He could finally hear the sound of a bond being broken. This was the final straw for him. With a deadpan expression, he looked directly at her and stated that he felt the same way, and that they should sever their ties. She was stunned by his words. She demanded to know what he was implying. A person of his standing should not be speaking to her in such a manner. However, she was the one who had initiated the argument. She continued to assert that he should not interfere with her, as unlike him, she had every right to dislike him. Kazuma remained silent. He clenched his fist, and with a sudden outburst of anger, he slammed it through the table. He then turned around facing the door, and finally stated that the matter was resolved. He closed the door behind him. Standing in shock, Rua's entourage expressed their disbelief at Kazuma's behavior, and advised her not to worry about him. Meanwhile, her friend Ya made an astute observation, questioning whether he had indeed broken the table. As they gathered, they were met with denial and disbelief that a human could have committed such an act. All the while, Ru stood a distance away, visibly shaken with rage, unable to comprehend how a piece of her confidence could be shattered by someone like him. While standing in place, she declares she will never forgive him for ending their friendship. In contrast, Kazuma finds the experience refreshing. As the world seems to glow, he questions why he has always allowed her to control him. He would rather face high school alone than sell his soul to a beast in human form. However, deciding to move forward and no longer living in her shadow, Kazuma finally feels free. That same night, we are introduced to Takayashi Kitao, the man pulling the strings behind the Taikai group. With a stern demeanor, he stares at the pages before him. However, this changes when Rua calls out to him from afar, and his mood brightens. She then mentions that Kazuma has been unkind to her today, as he threatened to end their friendship. Her statement draws the attention of the beauty standing idly in the room. Rua's cousin Takayashi Kikura turns in disbelief and asks if what she had said was true. Rua confirms her suspicion by reiterating that she was shocked, as she had never thought Kazuma would oppose her until now. Still unconvinced, however, her cousin Kikura suggests that perhaps she had been the one to say something unkind. Rua casually admitted to calling him her slave, and also said that being his childhood friend was the worst. They had already deduced that this was the case, as it was natural for him to be upset. Rua then insisted she was only teasing him. Jealousy surfaced, as she confessed it was infuriating to see Kazuma trying to make friends and looking for a girlfriend. Despite the absurdity of her thoughts, Kikura reminded her that wanting more friends was a normal human experience. Despite denying it, Rua expresses her feelings vocally. After all, Kazuma has always been her constant companion. The world's most endearing Rua is always by his side. However, the notion that he might desire to be close to another woman is inconceivable. Consequently, she believes it is only natural that she would tease him about it. She considers herself the only one who truly understands him. Because understands this, she loves him. This revelation was all Gramps needed to change his mind, as he attributes the situation to Kazuma. Tikora, however, appeared to be the only one who remained convinced of Ro's innocence, and encouraged her to apologize. However, she stubbornly argues that since her cousin was once Kazuma's mentor, she could resolve the situation by having him apologize and confess his love for her. She suggests he also kiss her. Kikora was astounded by her behavior and directed her attention to her uncle. She inquired if he had intended for Kazuma to marry Rua, and he confirmed that he had, as that was the reason he had her teach him martial arts and the arts of leadership. Additionally, Rua had liked him, and a talent such as his in music was unique. Gazing at her fan, Kikura agreed, claiming she had never seen anyone like him before, as ever since elementary school his grades have consistently been straight 3s out of 5, deliberately scoring slightly above average to accommodate his musical talent. All of this was part of his training to become Rua's shadow. However, if he were to ever stop and choose to aim higher, not only would the school or country be shaken, but the world. And, if he was not already suffering from success, it turns out he was always popular with the girls, as she is unable to count how many had been transferred out because of him. As a result, he never realized his popularity. Hearing this, Rua stands proud, claiming that is her Kazuma after all. Chairman Takayashiki notes that this is why he is a worthy candidate to take over the company. However, Tikora saw further. Since he has severed ties with Rua, he no longer needs to restrain himself, and she could not help but anticipate the moment when everything would spiral out of control. And it commenced the very next day. The halls of the Tikai Academy were filled with tension. In the center of the corridor sat a single desk and chair belonging to Kazuma. The message was clear. He had defied Rua, and this was his punishment. The wealthy Harris would stoop to such a level to demonstrate his cruelty. Nevertheless, he remained unfazed. Instead, he calmly considered his options. We could have moved the desk back to class, but that would have been a bit embarrassing. Or, we could have complained to the staff, but honestly, it wouldn't have made a difference, because the school is practically owned by her grandfather, who is the chairman of the TI group. So, this isn't just any academy, it's TI Academy, a place where S-class talent is nurtured. Elite students from all over the world are invited to join through a scholarship program to become the best in sports, arts, and academics. If you shine, you will not have to pay a single yen. However, it is important to note that this establishment has a hierarchical structure. At the top of the hierarchy is Rua, the self-proclaimed princess. Therefore, option 2 was not viable. Instead, Kazuma takes an unexpected action. He quickly writes a message on the paper taped to the chair. He mentioned he'd be studying independently, and since it was a direct message from Princess Rua herself, they should consider him present. The other students were taken aback by Kazuma's 200 IQ move, and they were both surprised and concerned about the potential trouble if others discovered it. He tells everyone it's a secret underground library that only he and a few others know about. Most students and some teachers don't even realize it exists. But since he's a regular, the library's head lets him in sometimes. As he walks down the stairs towards the door, he was thinking about how he'd just kill time until classes were over. dreaming of living a normal life. Now that Kazuma has turned against Lua, he is starting to worry that he might not make many friends or even find a girlfriend. As he reaches for the door handle, he is really hoping for a quiet life all to himself. But when he opens it, all he sees are yams. It is in that moment that Kazuma is completely unaware of the story that is about to happen. His dream of an ordinary life is now filled with extraordinary girls, and his days are anything but peaceful. With a million eyes watching, a single girl stirs up chaos. The evil and cunning Rua starts her live stream on a channel with over 191,000 subscribers. Oh no. And today, she is here to vent about someone who's seriously upset her recently. Since just the other day, she went out for karaoke with some girls from her class. So, it seems someone in Rua's karaoke group decided to crash the party and just left right in the middle of the song. I know, it's a bit of a bummer. Rua then leaned into her huge following, affectionately calling them her loyal subjects, and told them to pay attention because if the party is going well, they shouldn't be the ones to ruin it. And get this, she has some big news. She's announcing a new gig and teaming up with a new voice actress called Minato Amon. It turns out that not only do they both work at the same music agency, but they also go to the same school. Their first CD is coming out soon, and their first live show is next Sunday at the Shine Mall. And with that, Luis says goodbye as thousands of people flood the comments with love and support. But let's get back to the present. Kazuma, now awkwardly standing in front of a door he shouldn't have opened, looks down and apologizes for intruding earlier. Who had been startled moments earlier, bows her head slightly, and introduces herself as Amon Minato. She apologizes for raising her voice. Kazuma, feeling guilty for intruding, admits he should not have done so, and asks if she has also heard about the secret spot from the head of the library committee. When she confirms this, he realizes he is not the only one, and decides to wait outside, giving Amon the opportunity to change. A few minutes later, Amon opens the door and gently invites him back in, apologizing for the wait. Kazuma then asks the burning question that has been on his mind. Why was she changing in there? He explains that she was looking for a quiet place to rehearse her singing and dancing. As it turns out, she is a voice actress preparing for a significant upcoming event. That's when it clicks for him that she's from the entertainment world, just like Rua, another top-notch student chosen by the academy. He looks around and spots a huge mirror Amon brought. It's a clear sign of her hard work, but it also makes him wonder why she wasn't in class. Amon's eyes widens and she got to school this morning and found her desk and chair in the corridor, with a sign that said, "No seat for you." Kazuma stops dead. He's heard this before, a setup to humiliate her. And suddenly her teary eyes from earlier make perfect sense. His phone buzzed with a new message. No, it was a flurry of messages all from Rua. She was really keen to know where he was. And get this, she was even asking if he had seen her latest video. She might just drop his name in her next live stream and let her fans go after him. Unless of course he brings that sorry little desk back into class and begs. And just from the look in his eyes, you could tell he was thoroughly disgusted. Kazuma turned his attention back to Amon, but still puzzled. If she was really one of Teikai's special scholarship students, then why was she going through all this trouble? But even though Amon is a voice actress, she's far from popular. And she reckons she knows why she's upset. It's her face and her singing voice. But you know how my boy is, he just couldn't let her talk like that. He had to rummage through his music bag. He mentioned that he can't see her face clearly because of all her bangs, but he thinks her voice is pretty cute. And just look at her. Look at her face, mate. He got her out here blushing. But to her, it's not true at all. There are loads of other people out there with better voices, and compared to Rua Takayashiki, she's nothing. But even so, someone like her ended up forming a unit with Rua, which might just explain the harassment she's been getting lately. During Rua's live stream yesterday, she received a lot of comments. Some were quite harsh, like, if Rua teams up with someone like that, then her reputation is doomed. These comments from Rua's fans were pretty strong. But hey, sometimes people attract people like themselves. But it does raise the question, why is she even considering teaming up with that person? And she was shocked by what she heard, warning him that he couldn't just call her that, because if someone heard him badmouthing Rua at school, it would be a bad thing. But since it's just the two of them, he's letting his intrusive thoughts run wild. Amon admits that it wasn't her choice to make, but rather the agency. Because she was seen as plain and gloomy, they thought she would be the perfect supporting role behind Ro's spotlight. It was cruel. Yeah, but that's just Thai music for you. They would do anything to push Rua. And my god bro, how many music companies do these people own? Kazuma doesn't doubt that the whole desk and chair situation was Rua's idea. And even though it was the AY's plan to pair the two, Rua probably can't stand the thought of being paired with someone beneath her. And before he could even complete his thought, she stopped him. She's okay with being her background support, since it's a rare chance she's been given. So at the very least, she doesn't want to drag anyone down, but instead, give it everything she has. And her words really touched my son deeply. He wondered if that was why she was at the library to practice. When she said yes without a doubt, he couldn't help but smile, admiring how cool she seemed to him. Then he mentioned he'd like to keep company, but to be honest, all he can do is give feedback from the perspective of a complete amateur, and asked if it was all right with. Before Ammon could even finish, her eyes sparkled. She gently took his hand and smiled, promising to count on him from now on. Just seeing her so close, Kazuma realized something. This girl is way cuter than that pig Rua could ever hope to be. Time flew by, and before they knew it, lunchtime was here and Ammon had been practicing non-stop since morning. Kazuma started to worry she might be dehydrated, when suddenly from down the hallway, an obnoxious voice yelled his name, and right behind him was none other than the witch herself, Rua. As she asked, "Where has he been all this time?" And you could just tell, look at him. It was clear that the bloke didn't want to be there. Her verbal onslaught continued, as she pressed Kazuma, wondering why he was ignoring her. She even spotted that he had blocked her on Messenger. But then, in a moment of delusion, she thought maybe he couldn't look directly at her because of how beautiful she was. But then, like my dad walking out of my life, he walked right past them, and that's when he grabbed his shoulder, asking what the hell was up with his silent treatment. And all it took was one look for Kazuma to break down this man's whole character profile, like he was Batman or something. So we now know this chap's name is Asano, and he's a promising baseball scholarship student. Plus, it seems like he's not exactly the most dedicated person, hanging around Ruin instead of practicing. Seriously, he should take a leaf out of Ammon's book. But looking at him for too long really got Bro's blood boiling, especially since he wasn't saying anything. So he pulled back his fist, ready to swing. And wow, I'm not even a bro, but I had an instant reaction. He was wondering if he was punching air, but Kazuma was going to lay it on him. He was staring death itself in the eyes. He was so confused because he had no idea how he ended up behind him. Now he looks like a fool because he missed. People are starting to wonder if he's not up to par, and Kazuma even wanted to have a bit of fun, asking her maid if he's in good shape or something. Just as he was about to give it another go, Rua stopped him right there because she's the only one who can really challenge Kazuma. And they only get to do that if she gives them the go-ahead. Otherwise, no one should be messing with him, and he should know his limits. And suddenly, the corridor was dead quiet. Kazuma finally turned to her after all that, and you can see she had been waiting for this moment all day. But instead of reacting as she had hoped, he called her out, wondering if she really thought she had done something impressive just then. Instead of letting her get away with it, he decided to clear things up himself, declaring that absolutely no one was allowed to mess with him. Since he doesn't care who they are, he just wants them to leave him alone. Rua fell to her knees, eyes shimmering, heart pounding. She was gone. That line, that confidence, it hit her like a cupid with a bazooka. To her, Kazuma had never looked cooler. It feels like a whole week has flown by, and Ammon, our best girl, is really putting in the effort. But during practice, she spun too fast and almost fell over. That's when Kazuma sprang into action, catching her just before she hit the ground. She apologizes because he keeps falling over every time, but he reassures her not to worry, saying he wouldn't want her to get hurt before the big event. Ammon is so starstruck that she can't help but think how amazing Cosmo is. He could be anywhere in the room, but as soon as she trips, he's right there to catch her. But B is just trying to act like he's not Bruce Wayne in real life. But to her, it's not true. Ever since that day, he has been watching over her and encouraging her, not realizing how much it has helped her. And once again, she just wants to thank him. It was clear from his expression that no one had ever said something like that to him before. But as usual, he tries to brush it off. It was almost as if nothing had happened, and he quickly shifted his attention back to her performance. Wouldn't it be better to simply walk back to center stage instead of doing a spin, as she often seems to lose her balance when she does? But to her, it just wouldn't look the best that way. So Kazuma suggests jumping back in one move, since if she uses the strength in her knees, she'll be able to casually flip in the air. Is that bro using backflips to get the hood now? What are you talking about? You know, like this bro, you should sit down. And of course something like this is impossible for her. But most importantly, what the heck was that? And she's right. Normal people can't do that. Also, bro's grades must be off the charts. But nah, because ever since he was in primary school, he's only scored above average. But changing the topic once more, Kazuma thought about how her posture seemed a bit off. But no matter how hard she tries, she's never been able to fix her slouch. As always, he's using his brain to its fullest, suggesting she might want to play up that slouch of hers, perhaps by mimicking a purring cat. She happily obliged, giving him all the perfect poses and angles. He's completely smitten. It seems she's finally getting it. Kazuma suggests her designer make cat ears and a tail to match her outfit, and she was all in until she realized she couldn't use them for her performance with Rua, because they wouldn't look right with her background support role. Kazuma paused for a moment before asking if that was all right with her. Since singing and dancing aren't exactly her strong points, she'd actually rather he watched her practice acting instead. After all, she's a voice actor and dreams of performing as an anime character. That's why she's giving it her all now, hoping it will lead to other opportunities down the road. Koa couldn't help but think how positive she was, especially when she talked about voice acting. She seemed so full of life. He confessed how he felt envious, because he doesn't seem to have any dreams or goals to aspire to. When she asked if there wasn't anything he wanted to become, the only thing that came to his mind was that he wanted to be ordinary, a life that he could be proud to proclaim that this was who he was. Even then, she trusted him. If it was him, he was certain he could achieve what she wanted. And that was all he needed to hear as he smiled, grateful for her kind words. Feeling closer, Ammon seized the moment to ask a more personal question. Since the other day, she had heard he had gotten into a fight with Rua, and wondered if it was because of her. He reassured her that wasn't the case, but she persisted, mentioning how they were childhood friends, and how she must be putting him in a difficult position. However, he no longer considered her a childhood friend, and that was all she needed to hear. She rushes to confess, her voice a bit shaky at first, but then she asks if he might like to join her. Suddenly the witch shows up, wondering what the two of them are doing in such a small space. As she gets ready to attack, Rua bursts into the secret library. She knew Kazuma was there, but she didn't think he'd be with someone like her. She asked why he was with this voice actress, who isn't nearly as famous as she is. And just like that, insults started flying, calling Ammon rubbish and stupid. Rua finally understands everything. It seems Kazuma has been spending more time after school with a girl, which has been making things difficult for him. Just the thought of it has brought her to tears. But who will tell her that we do not care? She is not letting it go though, because Koa should be there with her instead. Ammon tries to calm things down by saying Kazuma was just helping her out, but the moment she says his first name, Lua's ears twitch. She storms over, grabs Ammon by the collar and pulls her close, because who gave her permission to call him by his first name? Instead, she orders her to know her place and call him Suzuki instead, as getting close to Kazuma. Well, to her, she's a million years too soon. She even wagered that those bangs would make her look ugly, but she was dead set wrong. Those eyes are incredible, like someone had really punched her. She checked if she had shown Kazuma that cute face under her bangs, and then out of nowhere, pulled out duct tape to slap those bangs back in place. But Kazuma, having had enough, called out to her, telling her to stop since, aren't they supposed to be part of a group? And while he might be right, Rua thinks she's just a supporting role anyway, so she can treat her however she wants. But Kazuma wasn't having it. Her so-called sidekick has been training daily to hold her own against Rua, so she should not interfere. However, his actions only confuse Rua, as he took Ammon's side, and they are clearly childhood friends. Kazuma stands by those who work hard. He had to reiterate that they are not childhood friends. She could sense his bloodlust. Initially, she struggled to speak, asking if he was still angry about the previous day, as her words were a joke, and he was confused. She had inadvertently traumatized him. How many people has she hurt with her so-called jokes? She is in high school. She needs to understand the difference between right and wrong. It is her responsibility to know her limits. His words really shook her. Without waiting for her to respond, Kazuma turned and walked past her, telling Ammon that they should leave. But when he turned to face her, she said she was much cuter than Ammon. She was determined not to lose to someone like her. Before she knew it, they were already out the door. Outside, Ammon lowered her head, apologizing, thinking it might have been her fault that Ruo got upset. But Kazuma reassured her that she did not need to apologize, because it had given him a great idea. They might be able to throw Rua off if they poked at her big ego. He's calling it the Ammon dance operation. After a quick look around at a nearby music shop, Kazuma gave Ammon a cute black cat earring and asked if she had a YouTube channel. He wanted her to wear it and upload her latest cat dance video, hoping it would really get people's attention. But Ammon, just like me, wasn't sure she'd get many subscribers and worried her video wouldn't be seen. Kazuma reassured her that he had a plan to help. All he asked was that she trusted him. His confidence was enough to calm her nerves, and after a moment, She nodded. But Kazuma wasn't finished yet. He wondered if she'd be comfortable lifting her bangs while recording the video, as she's rather adorable. However, the idea of others seeing her face makes her nervous, and hiding behind her bangs helps her unwind. Kazuma, being curious, asked if her agency had ever mentioned anything about it. It also makes sense why they wouldn't, since her appearance fits the support role image they were aiming for. Kazuma is starting to realize that this was probably their plan all along. It seems like they were meant to go solo from the beginning, but it looks like that's the plan. After the next event, the group is going to split up. Ammon mentioned it casually, but Kazuma couldn't help but feel a bit uneasy, wondering what showbiz was really like. Ammon, on the other hand, thought it was just the way things were, since the agency was owned by Rua's grandfather, so they'd naturally favor Rua. Plus, when it comes to popularity and looks, she felt that Rua was way beyond her reach. Because of that, she wondered if it was really okay to go up against someone with so much power and status as Rua. Hearing that, Kazuma finally understood. Her lack of confidence wasn't a character flaw. It was because of her surroundings. She had been raised in an industry that pushed anyone who stood out too much down, whether it was at school or in showbiz. Ammon had always been surrounded by people too afraid to lose their position. It's a shame when people tear others down just to be noticed. It's no wonder Ammon feels so down. Calling him out by his last name is a bit much. Ammon wondered if they were childhood friends and how much Rua seemed to like him, but Kazuma finds it a bit annoying right now. He also wanted to let her know that it was all right for her to call him Koa. Ammon's face lit up with excitement. She mentioned that it would make her really happy if he called her Ammon too. And look at this, mate. He did it so easily. And hey, why are you blushing? You just told him he could call you that. With her newfound determination, she looked up and said she would do her best for the video shoot that was coming up. And before anyone could blink, the video was live. A bright and cheerful Ammon, who is the voice actress for the Ammon dance on a channel with 41 subscribers, introduces herself, and then dances. And not just any dance, we're talking backflips, which are probably the same move Kazuma taught her in the last chapter. At the end, a little breathless Ammon returns to the camera, saying she will be performing live this Sunday, and invites anyone who is free to come. She also makes sure to ask everyone to subscribe. It makes me feel like I should be telling you all to subscribe more. But hey, watching from his phone, Kazuma couldn't help but think how cute her whole performance was. Yet, he did notice she got a few hate comments from Rua's fans. But among them were some real viewers. He jumped on Rua's channel straight away, not because he was into her, but just to get some info. And get this, she's going off, calling out everyone except Kazuma's real name, which makes her threat from the last chapter about fans hunting him down sound like a joke. But since then she's actually grown to 1.1 million subscribers, and keeps losing it over Kazuma not seeing how amazing she is. She wraps up her crash out session with showing off the fake warm and bubbly person she puts on online, saying that what we just saw was her emotional expression, acting as she was just letting out some of her recent frustration, thinking maybe she should try acting too. With that, she concludes, leading Kazuma to question what he has just witnessed. However, he remains more determined than ever. If that is her strategy, then he will overcome her, without restraint. Unfortunately for them, Rua's video garnered over 20,000 views in 3 hours. In contrast, Ammon's video has accumulated approximately 52 views in 2 hours. Nevertheless, he found Ammon's video to be exceptionally endearing, which means the only remaining task is to ensure it is widely viewed. Kazuma Suzuki was well aware of how he could assist her. While he remained an introvert and had few friends, his online presence was different. In a mobile game he played, he was the vice leader of a large clan. Within a few days, Ammon's video had gained over 500,000 views. She was surprised, as it had only been 3 days, and wondered what Kazuma had done during that time. However, he claimed he had only helped to spread the word. He pointed out that the video's success was mainly because it was so good. So it's really all thanks to Ammon's hard work and talent that got her here. And just hearing that made her really happy. She even mentioned running into someone just then that told her that they were coming to her event. But Ammon isn't the only one he's been promoting, since Rua has posters all over the place. But to Kazuma, all that's left is for Rua to take the bait. And boy did she latch onto his hook, because he reeled her right in. And of course, bro isn't at all surprised. Ammon, however, is rather surprised that Rua is sporting cat ears. But let's get to the main event. Rua mentions that she watched their little video, but she is convinced that Ammon has no chance of beating her, because this Sunday is the cat ear showdown, where everyone will find out who is the cutest and most popular. But Kazuma already knew she would go for it. It was his plan in the last chapter after all. But he sees right through her. Just from the slight twitch at the corner of her lips, he knew she wasn't confident. With everything set, it was now time for Kazuma to launch his attack. On the day of the event, Kazuma arrived early to cheer on Ammon, but he noticed she was standing by a different door, even though her dressing room was just around the corner. It turns out Rua had asked her manager to remove Ammon because she didn't want to be in the same space as someone who wasn't as well known. So Ammon decided to stay in a nearby storage room. Kazuma, being the optimist he is, thought this might be a good thing because now they wouldn't be disturbed. He mentioned that showtime was coming up and encouraged her, knowing she could do it. He'd been watching over her all along and knew she'd improved a lot. Still, Ammon wasn't entirely convinced and asked why he was willing to go to such lengths for someone like her, since she'd been wondering about it all along. Kazuma found it easier to see things. He feels like their school is too focused on its scholarship students, making it hard for others. He knows this isn't unique, but the way lower-class students are treated is really noticeable. But if someone like Ammon, who isn't a scholarship student, could succeed, he believes it could break down the barriers their school has created. To be honest, that's not his main motivation. Ever since he saw how hard Ammon was working, he really wanted to support her. He rummaged through his bag and remembered he wanted to give her a custom cat ear. He wanted to find something that would suit her and thought it might be best to just make it. She took the reins, thanking him once more. It made her very happy, and she promised to do her best. However, that was not quite how it was meant to be worn. As he placed his hand on her face, he gently moved her bangs to the side. He was showing her how to wear it, smiling as he thought it would look absolutely stunning on her. Ammon's face turned a bright red, and he could not find the right words. But Kazuma remembered a recent karaoke night when he went to the salon for a sweet fade. He felt like a completely different person. That's usually how novels go, but not for him with music, since everyone just pointed and laughed. But she's different. Ammon Minato is someone who can really shine. She has big dreams and has worked so hard, but was interrupted by someone knocking on the door. Since she's up next, Kazuma reaches out his hand and urges her to go for it and steal every single last one of Rua's fans. And grabbing onto it, she rushes towards the door, ready to make the performance of a lifetime. The event begins, and Rua steps forward to thank everyone for coming. Standing before the excited crowd is everyone's favorite idol, the princess herself. The audience is buzzing with excitement, especially when they see Rua looking extra adorable with cat ears on her head. Today she's here to debut her new unit, Princess Royale, and the Happy Servant. But speaking of her happy servant, Rua realizes she's forgotten to introduce her partner, the one who actually will be singing beside her today, Minato Ammon. With a bright smile, Ammon introduces herself and kindly asks the audience to support their new unit. Louis's eyes widen when she catches the murmurs rippling through the crowd. How cute they think Ammon looks. She struggles to comprehend it. After all, her actions were merely to raise her bangs. However, this is inconsequential, as when the singing and dancing commence, Rua believes she is the superior idol. Consequently, it is time to commence the show with their first song, Cute Dreamers. As the music begins and the voices fill the arena, the whisperers return, but this time, they are all about Om. The crowd is buzzing with excitement, wondering who this lovely girl is standing by their princess. Has anyone ever been this adorable on TV before? Isn't Ammon even cuter than Rua? Even her singing and dancing seem to steal the show too. And that's when Rua starts to feel the heat. She's getting a bit sweaty from all the pressure. From Kazuma watching from above the stage, Rua has already lost. She probably thought that opening with her singing and dancing would win her the day. But while Rua was busy being an idol, Ammon was practicing tirelessly, perfecting her performance until she shone with a dazzling charm. By the time the curtain went up, the battle was already won. Overcome by jealousy of the lower-ass girl who had become famous with her cat ears, Rua, without thinking, entered Ammon's world, playing by her own rules, just like Kazuma had done before. Now, Rua was about to experience the same crushing embarrassment he had felt then. Kazuma notices something strange. Men in black suits are moving through the audience towards the back of, and he quickly leaves, slipping through the no-entry section. Intrigued by the unfolding events, we switch to one of the suited men. Frustrated that he has been unable to contact his teammates, he is running out of time, particularly as the song is nearing its conclusion. He resolves to leave the stage himself. However, Kazuma is determined to intervene. He questions the man's intentions, demanding to know who he believed he could intimidate. The man, too focused on his mission, fails to notice his fallen comrades lying behind him. He seeks to understand the circumstances of the incident, but Kazuma is the one who is asking the questions. He quickly realizes that this man is a member of the Takayashiki family security. If Amon's performance as a supporting act hadn't been up to par, they would have had to remove her straight away. Once Kazuma confirms this, he springs into action, too quickly for anyone to catch. With a single, perfectly timed strike, the man collapses to the ground. It appears their security has been a bit lax lately. Without a moment to lose, he retreats back towards the arena, relieved that things seem to be going well for now. To Kazuma, this was Amon's big chance, the one she had worked so hard for, and he would never allow anyone to spoil it. But then he understood that even if they took off the stage, it would be for naught. Her voice had already touched everyone there. Amon was finally shining, and no one could stop her. Taking a deep breath, Kazuma cupped his hands and encouraged to succeed. The sound of his voice filled Am with renewed confidence. Conversely, the incident had a profound impact on Lua. She was disoriented and nearly injured her ankles. Before she could comprehend the situation, she fell, landing face first on the stage. Consequently, the event that would later be referred to as the fall of the idol Rua concluded with Amon's victory. By the following day, major entertainment outlets were abuzz with Rua's spectacular performance, yet they deliberately refrained from mentioning both her fall and Amon's remarkable debut. However, this was characteristic of Teikai's music, which often employed manipulative tactics and damage control. Nevertheless, in the age of social media, the truth was inescapable. Rua's downfall was becoming a viral sensation, and Amon's name was widely discussed. Amon received widespread praise. For Kazuma, this was sufficient. She was finally receiving the attention she deserved, which would require him to exert greater effort to remain by her side. He was certain Rua was furious. The official news didn't mention her fall, but everyone on the internet was talking about it with clips and memes. It was impossible to ignore anymore. Her star would only go up higher, and when it did, Kazuma knew that his very existence would be an obstacle for Rua, the so-called ruler of the school. So for now, he decided to fade into the background, quietly watching Amon's success from afar. But just as he turned to leave, Amon's voice cut through the chatter. She weaved through the crowd until she finally caught up to him. She bows, greeting him good morning, despite catching her breath. She asked if after school he would help her practice again. Kua was confused as the event had concluded, but Amon explained that she had received a call for a new audition for a new anime. Another agency had contacted her directly, and she considered leaving Rua's agency to pursue her dream of becoming a voice actress. This time, she wanted to practice with Kazuma by her side. As he was about to respond to the music, Amon pressed a finger to his lips. She did not want him to call her Amon anymore. From now on, he said softly. Only she was allowed to call her Amon. The crowded hallway was filled with the music's whispers. But before anyone else could react, Rua had broken her silence. Kusuma noticed that since she had pushed her bangs up, Amon had changed. And perhaps she was right. Perhaps it was the music's fault. He had been the one to give her this newfound confidence after all. As Amon leaned in closer, he whispered to if he intended to take this individual's ability. This was the final blow. Rua watched in horror as her partner was seized and fainted on the spot. Asano and the crowd shouted for an ambulance. After Amon's event concluded and June arrived, she rapidly rose to celebrity status. Indeed, she was constantly busy balancing her new job and school. Even a minor incident at the school entrance was enough to generate public interest. Kazuma was that enigmatic loner, who seems to be always in the company of Rua and Amon. At least, that's what everyone else thinks. But he's perfectly content, having finally embraced his tranquil life. Then, out of nowhere, some classmates burst into laughter, drawing his attention as Ao attempts to win Arya over, declaring that if he could only date her, he would be ready to take any chance. But Arya isn't convinced, suspecting that he might just be saying that because he was rejected by Rua. And wasn't he just a few months back saying how much he adored Amon? To her, he seems too eager to find a girlfriend. If he keeps up this behavior, no one will want him. While everyone teases him for being so open, he insists he really meant it. After all, Arya is stunning, a fashion icon, a top student and the dance club's star. So naturally he'd want to date her. But all she did was laugh right in his face, clearly a pickup line he just used. Plus she already has a boyfriend. And Asano nearly died from yet another rejection. It seems like everyone else already knew about this. But Arya is definitely not into guys without a car or money. And our brother Asa is out here starving, claiming he has money, so he could definitely treat her to some tea. That alone almost made her laugh in his face again, asking if he knew what she was holding. It was a new purse that had just been released this month, and her boyfriend had bought it for her without even asking for the price. If Ano had any plans to take his place, he would need to be able to afford tea 1,000 times. He realized she was far beyond his budget, and ultimately decided to let it go. This was because she is very concerned about her finances, and, as he observed, her appearance. They are the elite group of top students, but Ya was especially famous for her beauty and talent, and she was not afraid to speak her mind. Kazuma noticed that Ya was sitting on a desk that belonged to someone else. As he looked more closely, he saw the young woman holding a book she had just returned to the hidden library, so he guessed she must have borrowed it. Reflecting on this made him pleased to know it was not forgotten. He recognized it was a good book and could see she was eager to read it. While he was taking a moment, Kazuma gently suggested Arya find another seat. Initially her eyes widened, but quickly turned to frustration, as she was affronted by his attempt to be friendly and mention his annoyance. Kazuma remained unconcerned. The bell was about to ring, so she should return to her seat. However, she became even louder, as there was still time, and it was none of his business. All the while, Kazuma recalled her stubbornness from their karaoke outing in Chapter 1, when she had given him a similar look. This prompted him to consider that might actually dislike him. Regardless of her feelings, he had no other choice. As he lifted her from the table, everyone watched. Her face turned red, but Kima remained unfazed, calling out to the young lady who needed her desk. She rushed in to clean her desk and thanked him. With his objective completed, he gently lowered her feet to the ground. She stood there, her head down, quiet, until she suddenly snapped. A wave of embarrassment and frustration washed over her face, as she warned him not to mess with her, while also curiously wondering what he was trying to achieve, and decided to lay it on him, because how dare he do something like that to her. But just as she was about to continue, Rua had stepped into the room, cheerful and wishing everyone a good morning. In a flash, the room fell silent, as if the person in charge had finally arrived. As she moved towards Arya from behind, she whispered, asking what had happened, and if Kazuma had done anything to her. Arya, not wanting to upset the crazy woman, who would do anything for her man, quietly said it was nothing. Kazuma had to intervene, because he had repeatedly told her that he did not belong to her, but rather that they were now strangers. Roa was shocked, and asked why he continued to say such hurtful things to her. He had also sided with the unpleasant voice actress, even though she was clearly thinking of him. For the last time, he stated that he only supported those who worked hard, and not individuals who were lazy and arrogant. He then returned to his seat. Since he had severed ties with Rua, Kazuma could finally pursue his interests as an ordinary high school student. His first thought was to find a part-time job, but he was unsure of what would suit him. There was a new maiden book and a cafe with a good salary. Now that he considered it, he had been forced to live in Rua's family mansion during his middle school years. He will be learning to clean and serve in preparation for serving their family. While his new job is further than he would prefer, it is an actual cafe, and he will be able to put his experience to the test. He was hired on the spot, and will be starting next week. Kazuma was surprised by the simplicity of the situation. His employer had remarked on his polite gesture, and was delighted that he could visit. While their space is not large, and there are typically only 2 people at the front, with the senior usually in the kitchen, he should not be concerned. The team is reliable and easy to work with. As he made his way to the back to meet his senior, he hoped they would be pleasant. As he opened the door to introduce himself, the young lady in front of him was astonished, dropping her broom in disbelief, that their new part-time worker was Kazuma. Meanwhile, Rua recalled Kazuma's words, and as she displayed images of them on the wall, she realized he had been testing her love. From now on, she would give it her all. Her eyes, blazing with anger, shot towards him as she called out to him. She cautioned him not to tell anyone about her work. She was puzzled why, of all people, it had to be Kazuma. After all, she would never see him as her junior. But as Kazuma looked away and looked elsewhere, she called out to him again, hoping her secret would be safe with him. But in her desperation, she asked why he was so quiet. When she was feeling overwhelmed, she jokingly pointed out that working hard as a maid might seem a bit strange, and suggested he could just laugh about it. Kazuma, however, was puzzled, and asked why she thought it was funny, since she didn't see anything funny about someone working hard. As she blushed, she admitted that someone like her didn't really do much, and that she only took the job because the pay was good. But Kazuma noticed that her cleaning was actually quite thorough, as he found the glasses behind the chandelier, and underneath the chairs and tables spotless. And let's not forget those tricky spots that were surprisingly clean. But then again, she insisted she didn't do it, suggesting perhaps a little child had been the culprit. But if that were true, why do her hands look like they do? Both her hands and knees are a bit dirty. Kuma wondered if maybe she had been kneeling down to wipe the stains on the floor with a cloth, and then quickly mopped it up afterwards, praising her amazing work. As she looked at him, she blushed again, clenching her teeth, and then shouting that he should stop talking and change his clothes before they opened the cafe, because she has a lot to teach him first. Kazuma, standing there with a hopeful smile, promised to do his best. Soon after, the cafe was open. Arya went around taking orders, and then she approached the family, apologizing because it seemed a bit crowded for the day. She suggested they look at the menu while she arranged their seating and handed them their change with a warm, welcoming smile. It is quite a surprise to see Arya so different from her school self. It seems she is not just putting on a show, but she actually seems happier here than she would be at school. But enough about Arya for now. Kazuma needs to be careful not to interfere with her today. As the evening approached and the cafe quieted down, Arya collapsed over the counter, feeling utterly worn out. Kazuma, always eager to know, wondered if lunchtime was always so hectic. It seems that way, but things usually settle down in the evenings. He asked if she was really in the dance club, and how tough it must be to balance work and school. She jumped up from the counter, smiling, and said she wouldn't mess up because she's a genius. Now it was her turn to ask. She wondered if this was his first part-time job. She couldn't tell because he was moving so fast. But Kazuma only cares about not getting in her way. But she's adamant that he didn't do anything. In reality, she should be grateful to him. She quickly realized her mistake and decided to pause everything because she had become too friendly with her enemy. Kazuma, on the other hand, is completely unaware of the reason for their conflict. It is simply because he broke off contact with Rua. It should have been clear. Even though that might be true, Aya and her friends are not the ones he holds a grudge against. But what about that time he suddenly got angry during karaoke? How could it have been because he disliked all her friends and herself? But you know, he admitted he didn't, and thought it might be because of that pig Rua, which is why she still thinks that way. And when she finally figured it out, she wanted to know if the pig he was talking about was Rua. It's true, she used to follow her orders, but before she could even finish her thought, Kazuma didn't seem to care anymore. All that mattered was that he thought of her differently, really respected her. She is both efficient and meticulous with her work, which is why he would be grateful if she could teach him. After a moment of silence, she finally agreed to help him. From this point on, she would give her best, so he should be prepared. Grateful, he bowed before her. However, a lingering question remained about the man they had seen earlier. Apparently, during the visit of their last male customer, Kazuma had intervened. He claimed to want to ensure a great experience for the customers, but she had already discerned his deceit. Having observed him throughout the day, she knew it was not like him to interfere with her work. As he stood there, he pondered for a moment. He wondered if she had noticed that very same customer trailing her. He was also a pickpocket, always fiddling with his pockets in a strange way. And those suspicious eyes of his, it seemed Arya felt a strange vibe about him too. But if that was the case, Kazuma asked why she hadn't kicked him out. Where had all that school toughness gone? As she stood there trying to get her words out, she mentioned that it was because he was a customer. Well, she probably couldn't have said that, but he feels like she's overreacting. If she ever sees him again, she should let him know so he can handle it. She quietly thanks him. As she got closer, she noticed how kind he was, but was interrupted when another customer walked in. As Arya turned to greet them, it was Ammon, who cheerfully entered and called out to Kazuma. She had heard he was working part-time and wanted to drop by. But then Ammon spotted something. That person standing next to Kazuma seemed oddly familiar, like she'd seen them before. Koa picked up on it right away. Arya froze up, clearly not wanting anyone from school to find out about her job, and brushed it off as Ammon's imagination. He also asked if Arya had anything she wanted to do around the back, and she happily used that excuse to get up and leave. As time passed, Kazuma placed a cream soda down and apologized for the delay, while Ammon cheerfully thanked him for her order. She was struck by the restaurant's beauty. She had important work to do that day, and since she drew her motivation from Kazuma, she asked her manager for additional time. The cream soda was delicious, but she was more interested in seeing him in a tuxedo. With another bite, she could not help but express her contentment. Kazuma's reaction was immediate. It appeared her voice acting work had been progressing well, and the 3 main voice actors had been selected. However, Ammon inquired if Rua had visited the cafe. Despite this, Kazuma had not disclosed his new employment. Nevertheless, the situation remained suspicious. Rua had been silent for approximately 2 weeks, a rarity for a celebrity of her standing. Perhaps she was planning something, and Ammon found it all strange. She warned Kazuma to be careful, and shortly afterwards noticed how late it had become. As she stood to her feet, she ran over to Kazuma and embraced him. As he called out to her, she mentioned being fully recharged, and made her way over to the exit, thanking him for the meal. It appears Ammon had truly been flourishing, overcoming guilt and her former workplace. This all brings back the day he was able to take himself back. However, as Ammon had said, if Rua were to attempt something again, and anything were to happen, he would be prepared. Arya, observing from a distance, cannot help but wonder what is happening. She contemplates the nature of their relationship, and Mina's claim that Rua is a voice actress from her school. Arya had heard rumors of a close friendship between herself and Kazuma, but had not believed them. However, she found them physically attractive, and was certain Kazuma did not think of her. As she sat alone on the floor, it seemed that Kazuma was indeed a good person. Now streaming on YouTube, Rua welcomes everyone to join. A close friend had recently advised her that the most important thing was to try her best, and she intended to consider this seriously. After considerable reflection, she realized she could use her strength to advocate for others. She shared this idea with her grandfather, who agreed to lend his support. She will be embarking on a 2-day trip with him, starting tomorrow. She has also resolved to be a more responsible granddaughter, and intends to work collaboratively with her grandfather. She concludes her day by logging off. It has been exactly 1 week since Kazuma began his part-time job, and he has noticeably improved his physique. While he is still changing, the door behind him opened to reveal Hyagi, who became visibly upset and began to scream, questioning his decision to change here. However, there was nothing else Broken could do. There was only one changing room after all. He had already finished changing, so he did not mind her entering. It was during this time that she asked if he was all right. The reason for this was that his back was covered in scars, but Kazuma reassures her that short was bad before, but it's fine now. But actually, what she really meant to ask was about his muscles, because bro again is jacked, and she straight up started glazing him, complimenting bro since when he wears his uniform, his physique really stands out, and she wants to know all the details, like if he's in a clod and his workout routine, or maybe it's just because he's a bloke. As Kazuma stood in silence for a moment, he mentioned that it had been some time since he had trained, but he wanted to ask her if she was interested in half-naked bodies. She was, although she would never admit it. She had seen such things many times, not least from her boyfriend who she had seen shirtless frequently. This reminded Kazuma that he was speaking to someone with experience, as Hyagi was an adult who knew about love and relationships. As long as he remembered that, he would be fine with her. As he made the final touches to his uniform, he bowed before her, clearing his throat once more, and he would be counting on her guidance again today. That's all she needed to hear, as, from now on, he should just follow her lead. But she couldn't hold back any longer, and soon after they shared a laugh together. Now it was game time, and they were fully focused at work, with Kazuma thanking a few customers for their support. It seemed like it was nearly the end of rush hour, and everything was going smoothly. Kazuma was slightly concerned as their manager had fallen ill and had to return home. However, he decided to wash the mountain of dishes that had accumulated when he overheard a conversation between Hyagi and several customers. One of them had expressed a desire to order more food as a side dish. He suggested they take a ride, so he could take her to the beach or somewhere else. It appears this customer may be the typical irritating flirt. Kazuma is confident that Hidagi, who is experienced in love, will be able to handle the situation with success. In contrast, Hidagi is visibly distressed and expresses her inability to respond. Despite this, Kazuma and the others are enjoying themselves. This leaves Kazuma perplexed as to why Hidagi is reacting this way, suspecting it may be due to their status as customers. However, as the customer reached out to her, he expressed a desire to inspect her uniform and placed his hand on the hem. He suggested that the reason for her wearing a short skirt was to display it. As he touched her thigh, Hidagi shouted to stop. The customer and his companions remained oblivious to the situation, as they were aware of Kacha's volatile temper. Furthermore, he was a karate expert, and warned her to avoid provoking him. While Hyagi was visibly frightened by the cafe's patrons, Kachan sought to demonstrate his karate skills further. He urged her to observe the bottle he held, and as a highly skilled practitioner, he could split one cleanly in half. He wanted to show her the technique. As the bottle was in midair, Bro delivered a powerful chop, sending it across the room towards Kazuma. He caught it effortlessly in his right hand. His friends must have assumed this was all a game. That bottle almost came crashing down on someone, but Kachan is unfazed. He's just eager to give it another shot. So, as he focuses on Kazuma, he orders him to bring the bottle back. With a gaze as cold as a champion, he strides over and places the bottle on the table. When Hyagi calls out to him, Kachan is puzzled, but he becomes completely absorbed. As he straightens his hand, he effortlessly slices the bottle in half, sending the top flying. The top half then hits the corner of the wall and bounces into the bin. They had arrived here with a sense of confidence, and the entire cafe erupted in excitement, admiring Kazuma's skill. As Kachan and his crew watched in disbelief, Kachan's anger began to rise as he decided to grab onto Kazuma's collar. After all, the bottle had shattered. That was the extent of the incident. He was about to demonstrate something special when he suddenly struck Kachan in the throat. The impact caused Kachan's eyes to roll back, and he fell to the floor, gasping for air. Meanwhile, Kazuma made a public service announcement, warning customers to refrain from disturbing the cafe. It appears he may have gone a little overboard. If Kacha could just get his vocal cords back in order, he might be back in action in a few days. But he assures him that he will personally cover his medical expenses from his own salary. As he kneels down to Kachan's level, he wants to make it clear that he wants Hyagi to stay away from him, and asks if he has made himself clear. Big brother Kachan is a bit startled. He gets up and quickly leaves the scene, with his crew following shortly after. Without wasting any time, he turns to ask if Hyagi is alright, while also reminding her that she did her best just then. But then, without warning, she turned around, tears streaming down her face, and burying her face in his chest. And once more, the cafe erupted in applause, as they had never witnessed anything so moving. Apparently, Kachan and his friends had been causing a bit of a stir at this restaurant for some time, and it is good for Hyagi, having such a wonderful boyfriend. However, she quickly clarifies that it is not like, Kazuma was her boyfriend or anything. To be honest, they already knew and were just teasing her a bit. But on the other hand, it seemed like a customer had caught Kazuma's eye. As the sun dips below the horizon, Kazuma couldn't help but wonder if Hidagi was doing all right, especially since their usual customers might have had a bit of a misunderstanding. But then, Hyagi chimed in, suggesting she should be the one to apologize for having Kazuma cover for her earlier. However, Kazuma had already made his way to the front door, explaining that he'd be stepping out for a moment because the customer who had just left seemed to have left something behind. Before Hyagi could even say anything, he had already shut the door behind him, leaving her to wonder why she always acts like this. And why is it that she can never tell the truth about how she feels? As night falls, Koa calls out to the customer who had just left, mentioning that he had forgotten something. He instantly recognized Kazuma as the waiter from earlier who was so nice. But while checking his bag, he knew for certain he hadn't left anything, and wondered if maybe Kazuma had got the wrong person. But Kazuma insisted he take a look anyway. He noticed a chip had been lodged under table 8, and it appears to be a listening device. As soon as Bro saw the chip, he locked in, remarking on the potential danger and the presence of numerous dangerous individuals. Koa should therefore be cautious. However, Kazuma already has too many on his hands, particularly since he had recently expelled the 3 from earlier. As the man before him attempted to make light of the situation, Kazuma pointed out that at that time earlier today, everyone in the cafe was focused on the commotion at table 2, but he was the only one who was looking down. The man claimed he was merely frightened, as if he had met eyes with Koch-chan and his crew earlier. There was no telling what they would have done to him. However, Kazuma disagreed, as the man standing before him was very composed. He noticed when the man had picked up the bottle, he had calmly slipped his hand under the table. While looking directly at him, Kazuma called him a fat rat. As the man before him realized the situation, a sinister smile spread across his face. He immediately charged towards Kazuma with great speed. However, Kazuma evaded the attack, and before he could react, Kazuma stood behind him with his arms around his neck, ready to play Pop Goes the Weasel. He had not anticipated anything less from the prodigy and the pride of the Takayashiki family. It seemed therefore that the 10 arts was not a mere rumor. Back at the cafe, Hyagi reflects on Koa's impressive performance today. It is unusual, as he is not particularly noticeable at school, yet he manages to complete a significant amount of work, while also deterring the individuals from earlier. She is curious about his identity, and speculates he might be a superhero. However, she is certain he is always kind to her, and wonders if she should finally reveal the truth to him at a suitable moment. That same night, Kazuma is preparing to begin his work. It appears the so-called top 10 members of the Takayashiki family were not a myth. He immediately realized the pig must have sent him, and asked why he had been chosen to eliminate the girls around him. However, he refused to reveal his identity, as it was part of his job. Kazuma needed nothing more than that, to smash the listening device, making it crystal clear that whoever sent him would never bother him again. But this old geyser isn't about to let him just disappear. After all, if his mission went south, he'd probably be wiped out from the underground world, and by some high school kid no less. So they had only one choice. Furthermore, if he defeats Kazuma, his reputation will likely improve significantly. He may even secure a new job opportunity. Alternatively, if he were to harm the maid at the cafe, he would more than likely gain Ryu's favor. Koa is a formidable opponent. He charges at Kazuma, ready to strike, but effortlessly blocks his attack. Koa then sweeps his feet and watches Kazuma fall on his head top. As he places his knee in Kazuma's throat, he warns him to leave the Takayashiki family as he did previously. This occurs when Kazuma returns to the cafe. He took his time to collect all the listening devices. Even he was amazed at how many the other chap managed to install. Anyway, he just dropped them all to the floor and stomped on them. Luckily for him, he managed to find them all before Hiyagi noticed. And speaking of Hiyagi, she called out to him from behind, letting him know that the kitchen was all clean now. She inquired if he had concluded his engagement. She could not help but notice the immaculate state of the premises. Deciding to pursue her interest, she suggested they have tea together. Shortly after he agreed, she asked him a question, as he had always been curious about the reason for his part-time work. To her surprise, he explained it was quite simple. He wanted to try his hand at doing things a normal high schooler would do, since up until recently, he had only cared for the pig Rua. Consequently, he was unable to do normal things. Upon hearing this, she was unable to maintain her composure, and laughed at the fact that he had called Rua a pig. She now realizes only he could have said that about the granddaughter of the Takayashiki family. He then asked her why she had started doing part-time work. He wondered if it was to pay off a debt, although she does not appear to have financial difficulties. It was only after she had taken a moment to consider it that she confessed that all the designer purses and other items were counterfeit. She admitted that she had likely obtained them from Temu or Etsy. This revelation revealed that even a middle school allowance could afford all the items she had been displaying. The truth is that she is extremely impoverished. Since her father has passed away, her family situation has deteriorated to the point where she has had to begin working part-time to help with the living expenses. Despite her tendency to show off, she found it difficult to admit that she was a normal girl. The talk of having a boyfriend at university was a falsehood, and so was her claim of being experienced. It turned out everything was a fabrication. Kazuma was left wondering why she was sharing all this with him. It seems she doesn't even know why she's doing it herself, but she knows she wants him to hear her true feelings, because lying to him hurts her deeply. Plus, she wanted to apologize for what happened back then, when she went to karaoke. Kazuma realized she was the only one there who wasn't laughing, and he figured she must have a reason. Her perception of him was shaped by her past experiences. She once referred to him as Ryu's shadow. However, her actions throughout the time were motivated by her desire to gain acceptance within the upper class. Consequently, when he attempted to conform to their expectations, she was unable to find amusement in his efforts. Because he was a reflection of her own nature, she subsequently apologized for her previous coldness towards him, explaining that he represents the person she truly is, and that she dislikes it. It was in that moment that Kima finally comprehended her words. Nevertheless, the things he had seen about her made him respect her more. This surprised her initially, as she asked him what he was referring to, wondering if he had missed everything she had said about her fake boyfriend. She was simply trying to keep up with Rua's level of wealth. However, Kazuma does not care about the recommendation her boyfriend or brand names. He respects her for her dedication as a maid. She insists that anyone could have done it, but he insists that it is not just anyone. To him, Hiyagi is the most beautiful and honest maid he knows. She considered that perhaps he should not compliment women so readily, as his girlfriend might be upset. He responded by asking who she was referring to. She was referring to Amani, since they are dating. However, Kazuma clarified that they are not. This caused her to be incredulous. Despite this, it appears that Amani is very fond of him. If he has a beautiful and popular girlfriend, he should be happy. Therefore, why not date her? He then explained that he had considered such a situation and would not want to simply like a girl to show off to others. And his response had completely shocked her, causing her to blush instantly as she mentioned he had said something cool again. "Why are you glazing my guy, man? Stop." So it was clear they weren't dating, which meant this might actually be the perfect time to ask her out. Perhaps someone like her. But then the door behind him swung open. As Rua calls out to her dear Kazuma, while she greets the little stray kitten Hyagi, it seems she had brought company with her. Upon noticing her, Rua mentioned losing contact with the former geyser servant, and the silence of the listening devices. As expected, Kazuma asked if he finally understood, expressing his concern for his sake. Despite this, he remained confused. Rua then drew their attention to the new assassin she had borrowed, Hinokami, the brand new assassin of the Takayashiki family. Although she is small, she is also highly dangerous. Kazuma could discern her considerable skill from a single glance. While Rua may not have required a top 10 member to eliminate Hyagi, she will readily undertake any action to overcome every obstacle to her love. Consequently, she is willing to become a demon, but she didn't realize she was stirring up the devil himself. Now, she was eager to ask the insignificant person in front of her what she was doing with her Kazuma. Hyagi was completely spooked. He asked how she had even found this place. Well, let's just say Rua knew she worked there for ages. As classmates, her behavior, including fabricated information and a fictitious boyfriend, would have been thoroughly investigated. She was aware of these matters. Her behavior was entertaining, but now she cannot ignore Kazuma's attempts to flirt with her. Consequently, she will cancel all her scholarships. While she is at it, she could also be expelled. This is all because she decided to take Kazuma for herself. When they had gone out for karaoke, she had looked at him with such cold eyes. So why was she now fixated on him, openly calling her a two-faced snake to her face? Kazuma had enough, and told her to stop, since it was all her fault and he was not blaming Hyagi. Rua retorts that this does not concern him, but rather it was a matter between women. As Rei steps forward ready to fight, both her and Kazuma's eyes meet. However, Rua had not ceased her criticism of Hyagi's lies. Now that she considered it, had Hyagi not told her yesterday how after her date with her boyfriend, he had driven her home and kissed her goodbye? The entire story had nearly caused Rua to laugh out loud at its awkwardness. She is a cunning individual. In fact, now that she has thought about it, she wonders when she should reveal this to everyone. She is gradually pushing Kazuma further towards the brink. As he grabbed onto Hyagi, he helped her to her feet and pulled her close, kissing her on the lips. This caused Rua to nearly faint. However, now she had an experienced kiss, so it was no longer a lie. The kiss was no longer a lie. Once the truth settled in, Rua prepared her weapon, Rei instructing her to kill the girls standing across from her. Rei was on that timing and responded that she understood, and dashed directly towards both Kazuma and Hyagi. Without delay, he pushed Hyagi aside and shifted his stance, preparing to swing his leg towards her. He landed a backward kick to her stomach, which she barely managed to block. The impact sent her flying across the room until she finally landed on her feet and was once more face to face with Kazuma. Despite the action, Hyagi remained confused. Kazuma was not about to play around any longer, taunting her to come at him, eager to demonstrate his skill. However, from a distance, Vua once again instructed her not to waste any more time on Kazuma, but to instead target the girl. As Rai composed herself, she knelt to adjust her boot, and once more dashed towards Hyagi. This time, she leapt directly over Kazuma, as a hidden blade emerged from the sole of her boot and descended towards Hyagi. Acting swiftly again, Kazuma seized her leg, forcing her head to tilt. To her surprise, it was a concealed weapon. With one hand, he used the other to quickly slice the blade in half. Surprisingly, this caused Rei to smile, and a faint blush to spread across her cheeks, leaving Kazuma perplexed as to why she would laugh in such a situation. Shortly after, he released her leg, and explained that he now understood. She had likely been eager to fight, since it was the only freedom afforded to a machine like herself. Sensing there was more to her, he called her name, and asked why she had not severed her ties with the Takayashiki family. Initially, Rei was somewhat perplexed, but the possibility was a viable option. She could be free, and perhaps even secure a part-time job similar to his. In fact, considering the maid outfit, it might suit her surprisingly well. Her eyes lit up as she suddenly stared at Hyagi's behavior, only left her wondering who Kazuma truly was. Rua had been losing her patience, and demanded they cease their friendly interactions. She had no intention of allowing anyone to cut ties with her, and once again urged Rei to kill Hyagi immediately. But when Rua didn't reply, she started to get a bit worried, wondering if she had really gone against her orders. Then, like a machine that had been reset, Rai snapped back into her fighting position, and it seems like there's no turning back now. After all, it took Kazuma ages to break free. So, it looks like fighting is the only way to go. The cafe's doors swung open as Ru's cousin Kikura, from Chapter 1, entered, declaring that was sufficient. This was surprising even Kazuma himself, as he had not anticipated his master's presence. She only smiled at him, as it had been a long time since they had met, and immediately began apologizing, as their princess appeared to have been causing trouble once more. Rua, however, did not see it that way, as Hyade was the one at fault. Even if that were the case, demanding that person's death may have been excessive. There are significant issues with Rua's handling of the situation. Her use of both the Takayashiki family's resources and Rei to achieve her objectives was inappropriate, particularly given her stated purpose was for protection. Furthermore, if her grandfather discovered that these resources were used to kill a friend, she questions the consequences. Rua lacks an answer as she struggles to find a suitable response. Kikura is willing to overlook the matter provided Rua apologizes to her friend and returns home. However, Rua is stubbornly unwilling to apologize, as she genuinely does not understand why she must do so. As Kigota's grip on her shoulder tightens, she eventually relents. Shortly afterwards, she approaches Hyade, expressing regret for using the word kill, and apologizing. This unexpected apology surprises Kazuma, as he has never seen her apologize before. It is possible that she has finally had a moment of reflection. However, taking a moment to address Rua, Hyade also wished to apologize for her own deceit. Her apology was sincere, but only served to cause Rua to become agitated. She declared herself the one at fault, and that approaching Koa was unforgivable. This behavior suggests she has not changed, and leaves Kazuma to retract his earlier statements. Shortly afterwards, they made the decision to leave. Before they proceeded, Kikura wished to ask him a final question, as he had been wondering if Kazuma had any plans to return to the Takayashiki family. The question had caught him off guard, but he soon clarified that he did not, and apologized for not bidding farewell to his master before he did. Although she understood his perspective, she wanted to inform him that Rua's grandfather does not intend to give up on him, as he is determined to make him Rua's husband. Given his position as the most powerful man in Tokyo, the future will be challenging. Kazuma does not mind, as he had considered all that before severing his ties. His goal remains to live a normal life as he can. This brought a smile to Kikura's face, as she was unaware of his intentions. She had always suspected that this would happen, as he never seemed like someone who could be honed. With that, it was time for them to part ways. She would like to visit again as a customer. If that is the case, Kazuma does not object to giving her special treatment. However, in her opinion, their next meeting may be hostile. Nevertheless, if that is the case, Kazuma promises to be gentle with her. They then proceed towards the door, closing it behind them. The cafe returns to its former sense of peace. As they approach Hyade, Kazuma waves his hand before her face, noticing she has been distracted. He decides to move closer to ensure she is well. She is fine but cannot comprehend what has just occurred. She suddenly felt as though she was in a video game, and was uncertain whether she was about to die. This only prompted Kazuma to apologize for dragging her into the situation. However, she believed it was her own actions that had angered Rua for lying and kissing her husband. The memory of the kiss had caused her to blush deeply, and she sprang to her feet in a panic, thanking him for his protection. Now that she considered it, she could only wonder why he was so kind to her. She felt she didn't deserve to be friends with him. Kazuma, with a gentle look, asked if they needed any special qualities to be friends. Since he had never had friends before, he didn't really know what was normal. But what he did know was that he respected her and wondered if that wasn't enough to be friends. But the whole thing still didn't sit with Hyade. Instead, she asked that she at least do something to make it up to him. If that was the situation, he had a favor he was hoping to ask. He wanted someone to accompany him shopping for clothes. At karaoke, he had attempted to dress up, but was only laughed at. This had upset him, as he knew what was considered normal. He therefore asked if she could help him look more conventional and stylish. Her eyes lit up immediately, and she rushed to embrace him, assuring him that he should lead it to her. Furthermore, they should go to the mall together, as she would make him appear more attractive. He only desires to appear normal. Since they had been steadily growing closer, she looked up at him and requested that he henceforth call her Hayasha. She also wanted to call him Kazuma. He did not object, and shortly thereafter called her Ayaja. Having made this far, she also asked him about the kiss earlier, which prompted Kazuma to apologize, as he had never intended to do it without asking. However, the issue was not with the music, but rather their first experience. She expressed a desire to repeat it in a more intimate manner. He readily agreed and kissed her again. After the encounter, Ayacha was still aroused and asked him to repeat the act. She then wrapped her arms around him and gazed into his eyes. She wanted to express her gratitude. The following day at school, Hayagi's classmates were surprised by her change of classes, and asked her the reason. Apparently, a significant event had occurred. While Rua acknowledges that many events have occurred, she also reveals that she would have to retake the special students' exams. If she fails, she will be demoted to a regular student. She mocks Rua for this potential outcome, as it would force her to pay her own tuition. However, Hayagi abhors to be aware of this, and declares with confidence that she will pass the test easily, surprising Rua and leaving the others to wonder why the atmosphere had become so hostile. As Hayagi noticed a student entering the class, she swiftly called out to the young lady Panda. As she approached her, Hayagi wanted to inform her that today was her final day in class, and that she had something to confess. Kazuma was listening from behind the classroom door. Before taking her seat, Hayagi sincerely apologized for the inconvenience she had caused. At that point, Honda recalled the reference and quickly reassured her that it was fine and nothing to worry about. As Hayagi thanked her, she explained that she had been very enthusiastic about music herself, largely because she was a special student. However, she emphasized that this was not important, as there were many talented people who did not have any status or music title. The same could be said for the opposite. She had only recently realized this. Rua had heard enough of her behavior. Her sudden change in character was particularly surprising, given her previous dishonesty. As I turned back to look at her, Rua had captured the attention of the entire class. As everyone curiously wondered what Rua could possibly mean by she had been lying, and if they wanted to know that badly, she teasingly asked if she should reveal her secret to everyone. However, stepping directly into class, Kazuma warned her that that was enough, and followed up by asking if she had forgotten what Sakura had told her, since touching Hayagi is forbidden. And as soon as she saw the man himself, Rua's attitude changed. She mentioned that she was not actually using her hands, but her mouth instead. Hayagi interrupted her own thought, calling out to Kazuma. She appreciated his support but wanted to let him know that it was okay now, and that she would express her feelings properly. As she turned back to her former classmates, she mentioned that she had been pretending to maintain an appearance that was a lie. The truth was that her family was financially struggling, and she worked numerous part-time jobs. Furthermore, she did not have a college boyfriend. Therefore, she had been lying to them and was deeply sorry for it. She was only afraid of Rua's popularity, her status, her music, and the power she held. So she kept watching her mood, desperate to stay in her good graces and thinking she had to follow her. But now she was done. From now on she would treat Rua like a normal person. However, after considerable thought, she admitted that Rua was spoiled excessively. This was probably why she was so arrogant. And that alone was grounds for Rua to begin to lose her temper. She wondered who Hayagi thought she was speaking to. But she was not finished yet. As above all, Rua needed a friend who could be honest with her just like Hayagi. This revelation deeply affected Rua. Her eyes widened, leaving Kazuma himself in disbelief. It was remarkable to consider that even after Rua's actions, Hayagi was still attempting to reconcile with her. Her earnestness was truly admirable. She was a genuinely kind person. However, Hayagi had more to say. She expressed no intention of giving up on Koa either, leaving both Rua and Koa confused. While they might be friends, they are also rivals. As she pulled Kazuma closer, she wanted to warn him to be prepared. She kissed him on the cheek, declaring she had no intention of losing to Rua or Amon. The class erupted with excitement as everyone wondered who Kazuma was. Amane? And now he had Hayagi too. The only person not amused was Rua, who genuinely believed she would kill him. That same night, Sakura wanted to reiterate that killing was not permitted. Although she had decided to keep the subject quiet due to the previous chapter's incident, if there was a repeat, she would have no choice but to report it. She is also prohibited from using Rai. As Rua struggles to express herself, she suddenly bursts from frustration. She is unable to be by Kazuma's side because strange girls will only come and surround him. To add to her distress, he was kissed on the cheek today. In her opinion, if that is the case, then why does she not kiss him as well? However, the thought of making the first move is unthinkable. If Kazuma had mentioned that he could not help it and genuinely wanted to kiss her, then she might consider it. In that case, Sakura believes she should change her approach. Instead of constantly pushing others down, she should consider doing things Kazuma would actually enjoy. This may prevent him from looking at anyone else. As Rua froze for a moment, she reflected on his preferences. When Sakura called out to her again, Rua suddenly declared that was it. She finally understood and cheerfully made her way out of the room, as she mentioned going to speak to her grandfather, leaving Sakura to wonder if she would be alright. For more peak fiction, subscribe to the channel and comment down below which scene was your favorite. And don't forget to leave a like.